The number on the discharge form was wrong. That's what my mother said when she snatched the clipboard from the front desk, voice loud enough to make the intake nurse flinch. She wasn't looking at the number. She was looking at the name printed in the visitor column, repeated in the same neat handwriting. Night after night after night. Her fingers went still. Her jaw did the thing it does when she's recalculating the small, tight clench, the eyes going somewhere else, the breath held like a door she doesn't want to open. The intake nurse glanced at me. I was standing beside the elevator in a hospital gown I'd changed out of 20 minutes ago. Overnight bag at my feet. A discharge bracelet still on my left wrist because nobody had cut it off yet. I watched my mother's face go the color of old paper. She said the name out loud like it was a mistake. Daniel Mercer. And I thought, there it is. But that's not where the story starts. Let me go back to the part that matters first. My name is Nora. I'm 32 years old. I work as a charge nurse in a level 1 trauma center in the suburbs of Chicago, which means I have spent the better part of a decade watching people hold themselves together by the thinnest possible threads. I know what shock looks like. I know what grief sounds like. I know the exact moment someone decides to stop fighting, and what that decision does to the muscles around their eyes. People assume nurses are made of something harder than everyone else. We're not. We just get faster at putting the pieces back into something that looks like fine. I was not fine. I hadn't been fine in a long time. My brother Caleb is 26 and he wants to be a musician. When he was 17, my mother told everyone he had the voice of someone who was going somewhere. She said it at dinner tables and hair appointments and in the parking lots of his high school talent shows, and she said it with the kind of certainty that doesn't invite disagreement. Caleb has a decent voice. He has the kind of charm that fills a small room. He also has a very reliable habit of spending money he doesn't earn and borrowing the rest from people who love him too much to say no. I was the person who loved him too much to say no. It started the way it always starts, with families like mine, slowly, softly, with good reasons that made sense the first time you heard them. His guitar was secondhand and falling apart. Could I cover the repair? His car broke down 2 states away during a gig. Could I wire him something? Just until he got back on his feet. My mother's credit card debt climbed faster than her part-time bookkeeping could manage. My father had a back injury that kept him off contracting work for 8 months, then 12, then 18. The physical therapy isn't cheap, my mother said. You understand. You're a nurse. You know how these things go. I did understand. I understood so well that I said yes every single time. What I didn't understand, not then, was that I had become a system, not a daughter, a system. Regular, reliable, available. The kind you don't thank because you don't thank electricity or running water. You just use it. Over 4 years, the transfers totaled somewhere past $80,000. I didn't keep a spreadsheet because the part of me that would have made a spreadsheet was the same part that would have recognized what was happening. I kept my eyes on the individual requests, the small emergencies, the just this once. If I'd seen the total, I think something in me would have broken earlier, or maybe I needed it to break the way it eventually did all at once, on a floor, in front of people who had nothing to do with it. The night it happened, I was finishing a double shift that had turned into something close to a triple. We were short-staffed. We are always short-staffed. Someone had called out with a stomach bug, and someone else had a family situation. And I had said yes because that's what I do. I say yes, I cover, I stay. By hour 22, my feet had stopped being feet and become 2 separate problems I was managing from a distance. My hands were still doing everything right. Med checks, vitals, patient notes, but my body had gone somewhere ahead of me and I was catching up. The lounge smelled like old coffee and someone's leftover Thai food and the specific exhaustion of a building that never fully sleeps. I sat down to finish a patient summary. I was going to finish the summary and then drink some water and then go home and sleep for 10 hours and wake up and do it again. That was the plan. I remember the fluorescent light above me flickering once, twice. I remember the pen feeling heavier than it should. I remember thinking that I had forgotten to eat since 6 in the morning and that it was now close to 2 in the morning and that this was probably relevant information. I started to stand. The room tilted. Not the room, me. I felt the tilt originate somewhere behind my sternum, travel upward through my throat, and then the ceiling was simply closer than it had been. I heard my own name from across the lounge. I heard a chair scrape. I heard nothing after that. I woke up in a room that looked exactly like the rooms I have spent a decade working in, and somehow that made it worse. The beeping was familiar. The smell was familiar. The IV line taped to the back of my hand was familiar. I had placed lines like that 1,000 times. I had never had one placed in me. My colleague Brianna was standing at the foot of the bed. She has worked nights at the same hospital for 6 years, and I have seen her unbothered by things that would undo most people. But when she looked at me, her expression had a careful softness in it that told me more than the monitors did. What happened? My voice came out scratched and dry. You collapsed in the lounge, she said. Severe dehydration, exhaustion. Your blood pressure dropped pretty significantly. They're running more tests, but they think it might be cardiac related. You're staying. I stared at the ceiling. I'm staying. You scared the hell out of me, Nora. I wanted to apologize. That's the kind of person I am. I collapse, and my first instinct is to apologize for the inconvenience. My family, I said instead. Brianna's expression shifted in a way I recognized. I have made that expression. The one where you're about to tell someone something true and you're sorry about it. We called your mother, she said. She's on her way. And my dad? Brianna hesitated. Your mom said he's not feeling well. She said she'd be here soon. I nodded because there was nothing else to do and closed my eyes. I was so tired that the exhaustion felt physical, like something pressing down on me from outside. Like I was underweight I couldn't lift. I fell asleep thinking my mother would be there when I opened my eyes. She was. But she stayed for 40 minutes. I know it was 40 minutes because Brianna told me later. And Brianna doesn't round up. My mother came in with her coat still on, her face arranged in the expression she wears at funerals, appropriate concern, tasteful worry, and she asked the questions a person is supposed to ask. What did the doctors say? What are they testing for? Is there pain? She held my hand for a moment, and her hand was warm and familiar, and for just a second I felt like a child who had gotten to that hand and could finally stop being scared. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it. Something changed in her posture. Not much, just the smallest tightening, like a string pulled taut. That's your brother, she said. I watched her face. Is he on his way? She set her phone screen down on the arm of the chair in the specific way people do when they're hiding a response they already know you won't like. Honey, Caleb's showcase is tomorrow night. The one in Nashville. The label showcase. I had forgotten about the showcase. Or I had chosen to forget, which isn't the same thing, but functions the same way. You're going, I said. It wasn't a question. My mother's shoulders straightened. We've had this planned for 6 months. Your father already bought tickets. And Caleb needs us there. He's a wreck about it. You know how he gets before big performances. I looked at the IV line in my hand. Mom, you're stable, she said. The doctors said you're stable. And you work here. So you'll have people looking after you, and you'll practically be in your element. I'm a patient. You're a medical professional, she said, as if those two things cancel each other out. She left the next morning. She hugged me carefully, like I might mark her coat, and she said she would call. She did call twice in 3 days, both calls under 10 minutes, both ending with some variation of Caleb did so well, you would have loved it. My father texted once. Hope feeling better. My brother texted a video of the crowd at his showcase. 40 seconds long. No words. I set my phone on the bedside table and listened to the machines. On the second night, a nurse I hadn't met came to check my monitors. He was quieter than the night staff usually are, economical with movement. The kind of person who has learned to work around sleeping patients without thinking about it anymore. His name tag said Marcus. He adjusted the reading on my IV drip and then paused and looked at the doorway. You've got a visitor, he said. I turned my head. There was a figure in the hallway, standing just past the door's window frame, far enough back to be polite, close enough to see the room. A man, tall, somewhere in his mid to late 50s, wearing a jacket that had been good quality 20 years ago, and still was. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was just standing there, still, in the way that people stand when they've decided to stay somewhere for a reason that has nothing to do with comfort. Who is he? I asked. Marcus shook his head. He's been here about an hour. He asked for your room number downstairs. He didn't ask to come in. Has he said anything? He said he just wanted to know you weren't alone. Something cold moved through my chest that had nothing to do with my diagnosis. Tell him. I stopped. I didn't know what to tell him. Tell him I'm awake, I said finally. Marcus went to the door and said something I couldn't hear. The man in the hallway nodded once. He didn't come in. He moved to the chair outside the room's window and sat down slowly. The way people sit when their knees have been through things. He rested his forearms on his thighs and looked at the floor. He stayed until 4 a.m. When I woke up, the chair was empty. But the next evening, Marcus told me, without my asking, "Your visitor's back." I looked through the glass and there he was. Same jacket, same stillness, same specific quality of presence that takes up no space and somehow fills the hallway anyway. I had questions. I had a lot of questions, but I was also weak in a way that made forming questions feel optional. And so for 2 more days, I watched him through glass and let myself feel something I couldn't fully name. It was not comfort. Exactly. It was more like the feeling of recognizing something you didn't know you'd lost. On the 4th day, I asked Marcus his name. Marcus said it with no preamble. The way you say something you've been waiting to say. Daniel Mercer. I lay there with the name settling over me like something that had been dropped from a height. Daniel Mercer. My mother had said that name twice in my entire life, both times by accident. Both times followed by a silence that meant I was not supposed to ask. The second time, I had been 19, and I had asked anyway, and she'd told me he was nobody, an old acquaintance, someone who didn't need to be discussed. Her voice had the texture of a door being shut. Has he said why he's here? I asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. He spoke with billing this morning. He said carefully, "I'm not really supposed to. Please." He exhaled. "Your account balance is 0. Someone made an anonymous payment. But the name on the transfer confirmation billing told me because I asked. I shouldn't have. But I asked. The name is Daniel Mercer." I stared at the ceiling of a hospital I had worked in for 4 years, in a room 20 meters from the nurses' station where I had spent more hours than I could count, and I tried to breathe through the specific sensation of being undone by a kindness you didn't earn from a person you were told didn't exist. My family was in Nashville watching my brother take a bow. And a man whose name had been spoken like a mistake was paying my medical bills from the hallway of my hospital room. On day 5, I asked Marcus to let him in. He came to the doorway and stopped there the same way he'd stood in the hallway present, careful, not assuming permission he hadn't been given. Up close, he had gray at his temples and lines around his eyes that weren't from smiling or frowning, but from simply having been somewhere a long time. He looked at me the way people look when they've been waiting to look. "You didn't have to come," I said, because I didn't know how else to start. "I know," he said. "You've been in that chair every night." He nodded once, without apology. "I didn't want you in there without anyone on the other side of the glass." I studied him. My chest hurt in a way that wasn't cardiac. "Who are you to me?" He pulled the chair closer to the bed and sat down. And he took a long breath the way people take long breaths before they say things they've been carrying. "I'm your mother's older brother," he said. "Your uncle. She hasn't spoken to me in 23 years. The room was very quiet for a moment. "Why?" I asked. "Because I told her the truth about something she didn't want to be true," he said. "And your mother has never been able to stay in the same room as the truth for very long." I didn't ask what the truth was. Not then. I was too tired and the knowing could wait, because what mattered in that moment was the chair beside my bed that had been empty every night my family was 4 states away, and the man who had chosen a hospital hallway over wherever else he could have been. "You paid my bills," I said. He shook his head slightly. "I paid what any family member should have been here to handle." I looked at the ceiling. The fluorescent light above my bed was steadier than the one in the lounge where I'd fallen, and I focused on it until the tightness in my throat became manageable. "They're not bad people," I said, because even then, even lying in that bed, I needed to explain them before I could let myself be angry. Daniel looked at me with an expression that was neither agreement nor argument. Good people can do bad things when they've been allowed to, for long enough. My mother arrived on day 7. I heard her voice before I saw her, that particular pitch she saves for institutions, confident and slightly aggrieved, the voice of someone who believes their presence should require less friction than other people's. I was sitting up, which I'd been able to do for 2 days, and Daniel was in the chair beside my bed, because by then, we had stopped pretending the chair was for anyone else. He heard her voice first. His jaw tightened, just slightly, the way a person braces for weather. My mother came through the door and stopped. She looked at Daniel the way people look at things that aren't supposed to exist, the look of someone who has made a decision about reality and is now being presented with evidence against it. A muscle in her cheek pulled tight. "What are you doing here?" she said. Not a question. Daniel said her name. Just her name. Calm and flat like a fact. "You need to leave," she said. "I don't think I do," he said. Her eyes moved to me. They were the bright, sharp eyes she gets when she's decided she's in the right and is tired of waiting for everyone else to agree. "Nora, what is he doing in your room?" "Sitting with me," I said. "Something he's been doing every night for a week." Something crossed her face, not guilt exactly, but its less honest cousin. She moved past it quickly. "You look better," she said, as if she'd been here to observe the comparison. "The color's back." She set her bag down on the windowsill and looked around the room in that brisk way people have when they're assessing rather than seeing. "When are they discharging?" "When I'm ready." She turned. "I spoke with someone at the front desk. They said you could have gone home yesterday." "I didn't want to go home yesterday." Her chin lifted slightly. "Nora, I have a contractor coming to the house on Thursday, and your father needs to get to his follow-up appointment, and I can't leave him alone too. You were in Nashville 4 days ago." The room went quiet the way rooms go quiet when something true has been said out loud. My mother's mouth opened and closed. Then she straightened, the way she always straightens when she's shifting the narrative. "Caleb needed us there. You know what this showcase meant for him. You know how hard he's been working. He texted me a video," I said. 40 seconds. No words. He was overwhelmed. It was an emotional night. "Mom." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I have been covering this family financially for 4 years. I have paid for Dad's physical therapy, your credit cards, Caleb's equipment, his recording sessions, his apartment deposit when he lost his place in February. I have worked doubles and triples to make those transfers on time. I collapsed on a hospital floor because I hadn't eaten in 20 hours, and I was running on nothing, and you were gone for 7 days." Her expression shifted through several emotions too quickly to catch each one. She landed on wounded. She is very good at wounded. That's not fair. We didn't know it was that serious. The doctor said. "I know what the doctor said," I said. "I work here." "Nora, I want you to talk to someone," Daniel said quietly. Both of us looked at him. He was watching my mother with an expression that had no malice in it, just the patient steadiness of someone who has been waiting 23 years to be in the same room as this conversation. "I want you to explain to your daughter why you never told her I existed." My mother's face closed like a window being latched. "That has nothing to do with—" "She's 32 years old," Daniel said. "She's been the support system for this entire family since she was in her mid-20s, and she has never once had anyone in her corner. I would like to know if that's a coincidence or a plan. How dare you come into her hospital room and—" "How dare you not?" he said. The silence that followed was the loudest I had ever heard in a room with no windows open. My mother turned to me. This is a move I know well. She turns to me when she needs an ally in an argument, when she needs the weight of my agreement to tip the balance. She has done this my entire life. She turned to me the same way she used to turn to me when Caleb was in trouble, when my father was being unreasonable, when she needed someone in her corner who would stay because leaving felt impossible. I looked at her and I thought, I have been the person she turns to for 32 years. I have been the backup battery, the emergency fund, the soft place to land. And she left me alone in ICU to watch my brother take a bow. "You didn't tell me he existed," I said. "My whole life. He walked away from this family." "She walked away from me," Daniel said, "because I told her that what she was doing to you was wrong. 23 years ago, when you were 9, she'd already started. She'd already decided which kid was going to carry the weight." My mother's breath came faster. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," he said. "And so does she. And I think somewhere, you know it too." My mother's eyes filled, which is the last weapon in the arsenal, the one that has always worked on me because I am my mother's daughter, and I was taught that her pain is the pain that matters. I watched the tears form, and I felt the old reflex start the impulse to soften, to reach, to say, "It's okay, I understand. We'll figure it out." And then I felt something else underneath it, steady and unfamiliar, like ground I hadn't known was there. "I need you to hear me," I said. "I love you, but I can't do this anymore." She wiped her eyes quickly. "Do what?" "I just got here. Any of it," I said. "The transfers, the coverage, the being the backup. I can't do it anymore, and I'm not going to." Her expression moved fast through disbelief and then settled somewhere harder. "You have no idea how much this family—" $80,000, I said. "I have a very specific idea." She stared at me. "I kept records," I said. "I know I act like I don't keep records, but I kept records. Every transfer, every wire, every just until next month, that turned into the month after that. $80,000 in 4 years, and when I woke up alone in an ICU, my brother sent me a 40-second video with no words. My mother's mouth worked. That was Caleb didn't know how to. "I'm not angry at Caleb," I said, which was partly true and partly something I was still working toward. "I'm angry at the system, the one where I'm the responsible one, the one who figures it out, the one who holds everything together while everyone else gets to fall apart and be caught. I'm angry that the system worked so well that I had to collapse on a floor before anyone noticed the cracks." Daniel sat very still beside me. He had said his piece, and now he was simply present, which is its own kind of strength. My mother looked between us. For a moment she looked very tired, older than she is, standing in a hospital room with her bag on the windowsill and no ally available. "So what are you saying?" she said finally. Her voice was different now, flatter, lower, the voice underneath the voice. "I'm saying the transfers are stopping," I said. "I already changed the account. The one you had access to is closed. I set up a new one last Tuesday from my phone, and I took your name off the emergency contact form, and I updated my medical power of attorney through the hospital's legal office." She looked at me like I'd said something in another language. "You can't." "I already did," I said. "It's done. I'm not telling you to never speak to me again. I'm telling you that things are changing. And I need you to go home." She picked up her bag. I watched her pick it up, and I felt everything I expected to feel, the guilt, the ache, the specific grief of watching a parent look at you like you've disappointed them. But I also felt something I hadn't expected, a strange stillness underneath everything else, like the moment after you set down something very heavy and your arms remember what it felt like to be empty. "You'll regret this," she said at the door. "Maybe," I said. "But I won't regret it more than the last 4 years." She left without looking at Daniel. She didn't say goodbye. I listened to her heels on the hallway floor, and then the elevator, and then nothing, and the room settled back into the soft, regular sounds of a building doing its work. Daniel didn't say anything for a long time. He reached over and poured water into my cup from the pitcher on the nightstand and set it within reach, and then he leaned back in his chair and looked at the window. "Are you all right?" he asked eventually. I thought about it honestly. "My hands are shaking. That's normal. I feel like I might cry." "That's normal too." I pressed my lips together. "Tell me about the thing you told her 23 years ago." The truth she didn't want. He was quiet for a moment. "Your grandfather, her father, was not a kind man. He had a system too. Same as the one in your family. A person who holds everything together so everyone else doesn't have to. In his family, that person was your mother." He paused. I tried to tell her that she was repeating what was done to her. She told me I was wrong. She told me she never wanted to see me again. I absorbed this slowly. "So she learned it. Most people do," he said. "That doesn't make it right, but it might make it something other than evil." I looked at the chair beside my bed, the one he had occupied for 7 days, the one my family had visited for a combined total of maybe 3 hours, not counting the argument. "Why did you come?" I asked. "How did you even know?" "I've been checking on you from a distance for years," he said simply. "I have a friend who works admin here. She mentioned you'd been brought in. She didn't break any rules, she just mentioned it in passing, the way people mention things when they're worried." He looked at his hands. "I almost didn't come. I didn't know if you'd want a stranger in your hallway." "You're not a stranger," I said. "You're my uncle." Something in his face shifted, not dramatically, Not in a way that would read from across the room, but up close I could see it. The specific relief of being named correctly. I was discharged 4 days later. Not on my mother's timeline. On mine. It was a Tuesday morning, early, before the day shift fully turned over, while the hallways were still in that transitional quiet. Brianna walked me out because she'd asked to. She gave me a long hug in the lobby that said several things that neither of us needed to put into words. Daniel was waiting outside in a car that was old and clean and reliable looking, and he drove me to my apartment without asking if I wanted company and without offering more than I needed. On the drive, I watched the city go past gray buildings, gray sky, patches of snow still hanging on at the edges of parking lots, the stubborn kind that lasts into March when everything else has melted. I thought about Caleb performing on a stage in Nashville, the crowd noise, the lights. I thought about my father watching from a seat that had been paid for with my money. I thought about my mother's face in the hospital doorway. I thought about a man who sat in a hallway chair for 7 nights because he didn't want me to be alone. I don't know how to do this, I said. I wasn't being specific. He seemed to understand anyway. Do what? He asked. Have someone in my corner, without there being something expected afterward. He kept his eyes on the road. There's nothing expected, he said. I'm not here because I need something from you. I'm here because I should have been here a long time ago. You were shut out. I stopped trying, he said. That's on me. I told myself I respected her decision to cut contact. But some part of me was just easier. Not fighting takes less energy than fighting. He paused. When I heard you were in that hospital, something in me just decided it was done being easier. I looked out the window. My mother says, family is the people who share your blood. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Blood is a starting point, he said, finally. Not a destination. We sat with that for the rest of the drive. My apartment was exactly how I'd left it 11 days ago, dishes from before my last shift, still in the drying rack, a jacket on the back of the kitchen chair, a book open on the coffee table to a page I hadn't finished. It looked like a room that had been waiting. I stood in the middle of it and breathed. My phone had messages. I was no longer pretending they didn't exist. But I was also not pretending they required immediate answers. I set it on the kitchen counter and made tea, which is a thing I had not done slowly in longer than I could remember. The kettle took 4 minutes. I stood and watched it and did not check anything. My brother called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. He called again 10 minutes later, and this time when his name appeared on the screen, I thought about 40 seconds of crowd noise and no words, and I let it ring. He texted, Mom said you changed the account. What's going on? Then, Nora, come on. Then, after a pause, I didn't know it was that bad. I'm serious. I read that one twice. Then I put the phone face down and finished my tea. This is the part that people don't talk about when they talk about cutting off the way it doesn't feel triumphant. It doesn't feel like a movie moment. Music swelling. Some sudden lightness in the chest. It feels like grief, mostly. Like losing something that was hurting you but was also real. Also yours. Also the shape of your whole life for as long as you can remember. The guilt doesn't go away just because the decision was right. The right decision and the easy decision almost never overlap. But underneath the grief, present and steady and new, was something else. Not happiness exactly. More like the first morning you wake up and your body isn't in pain. And the absence of pain is so unfamiliar that it takes a minute to recognize it for what it is. I called Daniel the next afternoon. Not because I needed anything, or maybe because that was the first time in a long time that calling someone hadn't meant needing something. I want to know more about you, I said. Is that strange? No, he said. I want to know more about you too. Where do we start? He thought about it. Wherever you want. I stood in my kitchen in socked feet on a Tuesday afternoon, tea going cold beside me, city noise coming through the window, and I thought about that. Wherever I want. No crisis at the end of the sentence. No one else's emergency waiting to replace whatever I was about to say. Just a question with room for an honest answer. Tell me something about my grandfather, I said. The real version, not the one from the photo on my mother's bookshelf, he told me. I listened. Outside, the last of the March snow let go of the parking lot across the street and ran in quiet rivers toward the drain. It is strange, learning that you were never as alone as you thought you were. It is strange finding out that the loneliness had a shape that it had been designed. Even if the designer didn't know what they were designing, even if they built it out of their own loneliness, the way all of us build from what we know, the strangeness isn't a bad feeling. It's the feeling of a map being corrected. You were here all along. You just didn't know what you were looking at. I went back to work 6 weeks later, on day shifts, with a cardiologist sign-off and a therapist I see on Thursdays. Brianna got me a plant for my locker. Marcus, who had worked nights through my entire stay, fist-bumped me in the hallway and then went back to his rounds like it was nothing, which is exactly what I would have done, and exactly why I appreciated it. My mother has texted 4 times. She hasn't called. The texts have gotten shorter each time, and the last one was just, "I hope you're eating." I didn't answer, but I didn't delete it either. I'm not sure what the right thing is, yet. I'm not sure the right thing is a thing you find, so much as something you build slowly, out of decisions made on ordinary days. What I know is this. For 4 years, I convinced myself that the opposite of selfish was giving everything until there was nothing left. I convinced myself that the people who kept asking were proof that I was needed, and being needed was the same as being loved. It took a hospital floor and an empty chair and a man in a hallway to teach me the difference. Sometimes love is loud. Sometimes it calls and texts and shows up at your door with an opinion about your life choices. And sometimes love is a man in a 20-year-old jacket sitting outside a glass door at 2 a.m, asking for nothing, saying nothing, just making sure you are not alone. That's the kind I had been starving for. That's the kind I didn't know I was allowed to want. I know now, and I'm keeping the chair beside my bed.